All right.
Here we go.
Here we go, like you said. We're in another month now. I'm slicking my hair back, brushing my remaining teeth, dancing my moves.
Oh, almost there.
Oh,
Yes. Good morning,
that
Timothy.
was quick.
It was indeed. Okay, I think that some people are really curious and are very, very willing to see your dance behind the scenes, but maybe at some point we'll show that to them, not today. Apologies for this. And to everybody watching us, welcome to Japanese Politics One-on-One with Timothy Langley, the CEO of Langley Esquire, which is the oldest standing government relations agency here in Tokyo, and me as a host, Maya Matsuoka. So it's a pleasure to have you with us on this cloudy Sunday morning. So it's July 7th. We are already in July. And to Timothy, welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much, Maya. Half the year is gone.
It is, yes, almost.
Oh my gosh. So, Maya, today I'm reporting from my home office. I didn't go out to Katsuyama to the good ship Grimm's this weekend. I had other things that were going on. But it was a very eventful week. We had a typhoon that rolled through town. The drone Japan convention was held, a big convention on drones and the industry there was held at Makahari Mise on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I attended all day on Wednesday, even though the typhoon was here. But out in Chiba, it was very minimal. It wasn't like there was a typhoon at all. But it's like it reminds me so much of Macworld when Apple was first beginning to come out of their doldrums and how much energy and excitement was there. I sense the same thing with drones. It is just massive what's going on there. But the typhoon rolled through town. There was a little bit of damage, not so much here in Kanto, but further south there was, and Okinawa got really hammered. But the weather is now moving into Tsuyu, so that's the rainy season. June is the rainy season. There's certain not tropical, but regular flowering plants that always come out. I know you're hot on the flowering and the various plants that bloom, Maya. Tokyo is just it's almost a garden of trees and plants and bushes that flower throughout the entire year.
Yes, very much so indeed. And I think that we're now in the season of that is the I don't remember the Japanese for this, but that's the mountain dogwood. So the trees are blooming and it's really beautiful around here.
Also,
And still
wisteria.
wisteria
Yeah,
as well. But well, wisteria passed actually, so it's beyond the time. But yes, you're forgiven. Don't worry about that. Yes, indeed. And some of the Satsuki Tsutsuji, they are still in bloom, even though, well, blooming over already. But yet, it's a beautiful, beautiful time of the year, indeed, here
yeah.
in Tokyo.
Tokyo is actually a very pretty city when you get right down to it. It's safe, it's clean, but it's also very, very lovely preserved by the Tokyo government, the gardening
Yes,
and the upkeep.
very much indeed. Just yesterday, I was walking in the neighborhood, and there were all those tiny gardens here. And obviously, they are maintained by volunteers because they're not private gardens, right? So very pretty. And every kind of 50 or 60 meters, you see them here in this neighborhood. But in other places, they are bigger, they are even more beautiful. So Tokyo is really a very nice place.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Listen,
Okay.
getting on to politics and what's going on here, Maya, it is just incredible. I know you sense it too. Just the compression of what's going on inside Japan geopolitically. In the industrial base with the yen. The yen breached 160 this week, Maya. It is now at 160.3. So
Right.
the fear here is once it breaches that kind of psychological barrier, the sky's the limit. And there is talk about it's springing way past 160, maybe 165, 170. So there's a bit of a panic going on. There's a lot of energy that's going into uh, coalescing this group of like-minded countries. The Island States Oceanic Summit was this week. The prime minister hosted leaders of many of the island nations, a couple of prime ministers and presidents. They were in the Conte to weave together this kind of bastion against potential kinetic action by China. And China has actually been on the move a bit too. The prime minister is also reaching out to North Korea. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Xi is going to be in North Korea next week. And then he's visiting the United States in September, the first time in more than a decade. The prime minister is on her travel itinerary too. She's going to Europe. There's just so much going on, not just with the prime minister, with the different political parties, with Ishin, with Kokomin, with the reduction of lower house seats. There's just so much to talk about. I'll try and run through it as quickly as possible, Maya. I don't know if I could do it in 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes, but it'll be compacted, and then maybe we can roll into a little bit more of the beef during the Q&A period.
Yes, very much so. And to everybody who is joining us now, and of course, if you have joined us before, please share your thoughts and comments and questions in the comment sections so that I can read them out to Timothy once he's done with the briefing, and we can have a discussion here. It's really, we very much appreciate your participation and your engagement, because that's, well, what we're doing it for. These briefings
Mm-hmm.
have been on for 5.5 years already. And one of the things that really keep us going is, well, your interest in them and the thoughts that you have to share, and you do share with us. So please get ready for that. Please share those questions and comments, and we'll move to them once Timothy is done with the briefing. Yeah,
It sounds like you can't wait for that.
I cannot.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
So,
Well, it's
so Maya,
your time.
let's get with. Thank you. Let's get with what happened with the prime minister. The prime minister has been on the hot seat in a couple of different areas throughout this last week. This week was really busy. Bunshun came out with its third article about the prime minister besmirching her competitors for prime minister 6 months ago. You might remember that race, and it's come out since then that she was launching a social media campaign to diminish them and to promote herself, and it's become a rather big issue. She initially kind of sidestepped it, denied it, and she was confronted with that today or this week in the Diet. So that means she's testifying in the Diet. You can't lie. You'll be held in contempt. You'll be charged with perjury. It's a very serious issue, and there are some people that just don't like the prime minister. I can't imagine the amount of stress and the amount of work that's involved. Typically, for movers and shakers in either house of parliament, the upper house or the lower house, but with cabinet ministers, but it doesn't even compare to the prime minister. She is holding up really well, but it wears on you. You can see how it's wearing on her. And in addition to that, she is required to show up on different hearings. She's supposed to be in the hot seat to receive questions from the opposition parties. We talked about that last week or 2 weeks ago. And she was also, excuse me, on the hot seat this week. And in response to some questions about Bunshun, her voice shot up a bit of an octave, and she kind of hemmed and hawed. And those are typically, signals of dodging or lying or that sort of thing. So they're really circling, and they smell blood in the water. I'm unfortunately afraid that the issue hasn't died. Bunshun grabbing on this, sinking their teeth into a story like this for 3 consecutive issues is something. Bunshun is known as the career killer, the prime minister killer in Japanese politics. So it is something to watch. But like I said, in addition to the Diet hearings, to the passage of several important pieces of legislation for consideration of several others that I'll get into. She also hosted this enormous collection of island states, ASEAN ocean island states at the prime minister's residence. It was a big summit. Several, well, I think all of the leaders of the various countries, including, excuse me, Tuvalu and Palau, were in attendance, and many of these also involve, visits with the emperor as well. So it's a pretty big deal, and you can see that it's not just the ocean states; it's also Australia and New Zealand. This sale of frigates to Australia is so massive; it means so much to Japan. It's also a technology transfer because although the number of frigates numbers, I think 11, most of them will be built not by Mitsubishi Heavy, but in Australia. So they're developing their military industrial complex as well, but in tandem with Japan. The technology will be shared, there will be shared platforms. And New Zealand is catching wind of this, and they want a piece of that action too. So it's not just Australia, New Zealand, the island states. This thing is building, and it's not really under the guiding hand of Big Brother, of the United States. The United States is involved in other things, and I think Japan has taken that cue, and along with other countries, and they need to develop their own response, their own defense base, their own protection. And it seems clear to me, and we can get into the Q&A later, that excuse me, Article 9 is clearly on the blocks for revision, and the Prime Minister has said so herself. She's got a committee. There's actually a constitutional revision committee that's been in place and meeting almost monthly for the last 20 or 30 years. So it's a big deal. But the Prime Minister is really hell-bent on the free and open Indo-Pacific initiative. She's talking about that with Vietnam, with the island states, with Taiwan. And she's also building up the military industrial base of Japan. And this deal with the frigates is part of that. But also Japan, you might have heard, is starting to export missiles. So these missiles are under license from the United States, but they are embedded with Japanese technology as well. And now Japan is producing them for sale elsewhere. So there are certain countries that the export laws allow these kinds of defensive weapons, or probably dual-use weapons to be sold. But I think, in spite of what the Constitution says, I think Japan is attempting to deal with the reality of the geopolitical situation, and it continues to grow. China has a massive aircraft carrier. I think it's only got one, but it was in exercises this week east of the Philippines. There were no kind of incursions or breaches to Japan or Filipino airspace. There was no tailing of aircraft, that sort of thing. But they are in exercises, and when an aircraft carrier is on drills or on patrol, it's a flotilla. It's not just one or two ships. It's usually a flotilla of 15 or so vessels, including submarines. So this is a big deal. China has pretty much held back displaying or exercising its aircraft carrier. It's one aircraft carrier. So this shows a little bit of, it's not quite saber rattling, but there is a lot going on between the Philippines and Japan, as we reported last week, this strategic alliance, not quite allies, but a strategic partnership, and the sharing of platforms, intel, weaponry, that sort of thing. So that is beginning to build too. And this theme, we talk about it all the time, so it's something that is not new to you if you're watching this program, but it is something that's beginning to take on an awful lot of momentum. So it's something to keep your eye on. The defense minister Koizumi was in Singapore just this last week, last Saturday and Sunday. He made a couple of pronouncements, a couple of policy statements as well, and at the same time, both China and Russia were, pounding the table and saying Japan is remilitarizing. Look at what they're doing. They're bad, while they're doing their own things too. And he took it. He took it well, and he responded. Japan responded with a firm rebuttal about Japan's remilitarization. He highlighted the defensive nature of these enhancements and the commitment to regional stability, but it is a key backdrop for defense export momentum. So this is going on. It doesn't involve just words and diplomacy. There's a lot of beef going on to these bones as well. There is a lot of action going on in North Korea too. It's not talked about much in the regular press. I think maybe they've decided it's a little bit too upsetting for the Japanese population. There's enough going on. They don't want to kind of tap down the economic exuberance that kind of doesn't exist yet. But there is action going on there. Submarine-based missile firings, they are still testing. But President Xi is scheduled to be in North Korea next week. This next week coming, big fanfare. 95% of North Korea's income and resources are derived from China. So it is a big deal that he's going there, especially following so quickly after the Trump visit. So you can kind of interpolate that there is something going on. Xi wants something. Xi wants the United States to do something. He's holding these the sale of these Boeing airplanes kind of in his hand, and I think it's really a juicy deal for the United States. They want that very badly, but it's a lot of horse trading that's going on, and I think that's what South Korea and Japan are a little bit worried about. What happens in these closed door discussions. The prime minister did receive a phone call from President Trump even before he returned back to Washington following the Xi meetings, but there is a lot going on there. The prime minister, to her credit, you've got to take your hat off to her, is still appealing to North Korea to have a summit or a meeting of some sort. First of all, to talk about the abduction issue that has gone unresolved for 30 years. North Korea doesn't want to have anything to do with that. They have certain conditions. Unless you meet these conditions, until you stop your aggressive ways, we're not even going to talk with you. But she's still hammering home there. The abductees, some of them were released, maybe 11 of them were released about 15, 20 years ago with huge fanfare. But there are a lot that are still there. These are people that were conked on the head and thrown into rubber dinghies, rowed out to waiting North Korean submarines along the Japan Sea coast, and also people throughout Europe who were likewise tricked or also conked on the head, thrown into bags and taken to North Korea. There are innumerable stories like that. Not many people know about it, but it is part of the Japan-North Korea tension that's going on there. And speaking of tension, Russia also jumped in and said, Japan, you are remilitarizing and you're causing great distress and you're going back to your old ways. They're saying that out of one side of the mouth, but still, in the current situation where oil and LPG gas are rare commodities, becoming rare commodities, there is trade that's going on. And as you might know, there are 4 islands that were invaded by Russia at the end of the war, World War II, and those islands continue to be occupied by Russia. But there are many families who grew up there that were born there, Japanese families, and they have annual excursions to these islands, and there is one being put together right now. It does require, approval of Moscow to do that, but there are pockets where things are happening, things are going forward. But it's, even Shinzo Abe with maybe 20, 23 or 24 personal one-on-one visits with Putin, with exchanging puppies and Akita dogs and doing all sorts of things, just was really not able to to achieve any progress there. I think the Japanese still are pushing on that. There has been no peace treaty signed by Russia and Japan as a consequence of that. But there is just a lot going on in that area. North Korea, Russia, China, and this two-way diplomacy, this shuttle diplomacy between South Korea and Japan is really beginning to pay dividends. And more likely than not, this stabilization of the region is really something of a guarantee that China will think, very deeply 2 or 3 times before it moves on Taiwan. Although it has said that that is its stated purpose. But let's see what happens there. The other thing that happened this week, which is of great significance, is you remember that Japan and the Philippines signed strategic partnership agreements last week. This week, the UN has invited 4 SDF officers, to be positioned in Germany in the Ukraine Strategic Center. So that means the SDF is now joining the UN, and the UN has been working on developing a relationship with Japan for a long time. You remember the conversation about setting up a UN office in Tokyo. That never quite got off the ground. But this one here, 4 officers assigned to NATO's Ukraine command in Germany, is a pretty big deal. It's the first time that this has happened, and I think it's rather significant. It's only 4 officers, but they're going to be talking about interoperability, potential export of defensive equipment, and just integration of forces. It's just a tiny step, but it is part of that current of change that we're witnessing with the military-industrial complex. The other one is that France has invited Japan to join France's Space Command. So there's a Space Force of the United States. It's a 5th arm of the military, the Space Command, or Space Force. France has its own version of that. It's called a Space Command, and they're going to be sending a liaison officer there. They've been invited, which is really a significant expansion of the space domain cooperation in Japan, with not only NASA, the United States, but also with France. France is one of the dominant leaders here, as are a couple of other countries. You can't diminish what's going on with China as well. But this is pretty big. These kinds of regional alliances, these almost partnerships in a certain way, just continue to expand. Missile exports, interoperability of platforms, that sort of thing. It's just a huge deal. I'd like to move on now to what's going on in the Diet. It was on fire this week, and I think you can sense it too. If you turn on the television, you see the Diet hearings going on, and that's because we are in the middle of a Diet session. It ends in mid-July, so we've got a little bit more than a month left. They've got to push through the legislation. There are typically around 67 or so bills that are considered to be passed through legislation in any one Diet session. So they're really working on this. The supplemental bill, you remember, they were talking about a supplemental bill because of the oil exports in Hormuz. They passed that this last week. It was rather brisk and quick. They passed it through the lower house rather easily, as you would expect. The upper house too, although the LDP and their coalition with Ishin still lacks 4 votes. It looks like Kokumin, Mr. Tamaki's group, the Democratic Party for the People, also weighed in, but they got it passed. Everybody wants that supplemental budget. It's not peanuts. It's bigger than the supplemental budget that was passed just before Christmas. You remember that. But during this time, yes, once again, they're talking about the supplemental budget, and they're talking about other issues. The Bunshun article came up. The prime minister was called upon to respond to that. There, even in her own party, there are some LDP that, they're murmuring, that, maybe she's going to suffer her political polling is going to suffer as a result of that. It's still very strong, but yes, she is getting beat up a bit. But I think that's that's the rough and tumble of what happens to prime ministers here. You just the system just chews them up. I can't imagine somebody would want to do it. I mean, look at Mr. Abe. He was there for a long time, but I think he handled it pretty deftly. Plus, he had the largest political faction by far, twice as big as the next political faction. So he had a good grip on what was going on. But Takaichi is a little bit different. She doesn't come from a faction. And I think as a consequence of that, and I think as a consequence of knowing beforehand that Bunshun was out for blood, Taro Aso, who is, by the way, the oldest parliamentarian in the lower house, he cobbled together this rah-rah, let's support the prime minister group, which received a lot of attendance and a lot of fanfare. It's not quite a faction. It's maybe not even a Benkyokai, but I think that's probably, for lack of anything else, what they're going to call it. But she is suffering, and if you're reading Bunshun, and probably most of you are not, you can see that this is beginning to get a little bit of traction. She was responding last week by saying, these stories that we hear, nobody ever mentions Bunshun by name, of course, but these stories that we hear, they don't really amount to evidence. So they're just something that you can disregard. It's just social media buzz. And then Bunshun came up and said, evidence? Do you want evidence? And now they have, recorded conversations that somebody took and shared with Bunshun. So now, you want evidence? Okay, here, how about this? So it's not looking so great. Like I said, the supplemental budget passed this week, 3.11 trillion yen. That's pretty big. It received cross party support, but it's larger than what 1.2 trillion during Christmas. You might remember that. That was one of the last pieces of legislation or bills that they passed last year before they rolled into a closing of the House and then a resurgence of the LDP within the lower house. But this creates a new reserve fund. It extends fuel subsidies, and it's funded by existing reserves and allocation, and of course, Japan government bonds. But it shifts some of the obligations from 2026 to from a projected surplus, tiny surplus, now to a deficit. So that near-term impact is it's a bit of a cushion for energy users and some of the economy, but it really intensifies the exit strategy and the long-term fiscal questions. And you'll remember that Ms. Takaichi promoted herself as a fiscal conservative. She is going to run this country in a fiscally responsible way. So I guess it's politics. The other thing that she has committed on when she was campaigning for prime minister was, let's cut the consumption tax. The consumption tax right now is 10%, but for foodstuffs, it's 8%. And my commitment to you voters, if you vote for me, is I'm going to eliminate the food tax. It came out to be, we can't zero it out, Miss Prime Minister, but we can reduce it to 1%. Okay, 1%. So that's kind of her commitment. She's still pursuing that. It's under consideration. Some people like it and some people don't. So there's horse trading going on. There are other areas of the economy or of legislation or of different projects that are going on that will be traded. They'll get benefits for voting for different pet projects of the prime minister or for the administration. So it does present a bit of a technical challenge. If the government does reduce the consumption tax for foodstuffs to 1%, that creates about a 4 trillion yen shortfall for the budget that they have not anticipated. But I think the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry has said it is doable. We can implement it in 6 months' time. I think the rollout, I think it's going to go forward. They're going to vote on it before this diet session ends, probably within the next 2 weeks. And it will go into effect in 2027. and if they can hurry it up, because it will be a boost to the economy, and the economy certainly needs it, and then deal with the devil later. So that's what's going on with the consumption tax issue and also the prime minister. You might have heard that the imperial family doesn't have a male heir to which the succession should be passed to at the unfortunate timing of the transition from one emperor to the next. There is no male heir to do that, and so it's creating a bit of a buzz within the Diet, because the Diet gets to decide. It's not an issue for the imperial household; it's an issue that the people get to decide. And there is a lot of discussion, a lot of movement going on there. There was some policies that were adopted by Parliament leaders on Thursday, and um, what they've decided is that female members of the imperial household retain their status even upon marriage. So if they marry a commoner, they still maintain their status. There's also the possibility of male adoptions from former branches. Former branches, they call them cadet branches. When MacArthur came in, he wanted to reduce the imperial family to the emperor and his immediate family. And before that, there were lots of side branches, uncles, aunts. They were all getting money from the government. They were on stipends. They had jobs. They represented the imperial household. They lived a kingly life, we can say. But he's eliminated all of that and had reduced it. And that's why, if you're familiar with the Gehinkan in that area in Akasaka, it's the housing area for brothers and sisters and very close imperial household relatives to the emperor. The emperor, of course, lives in the main palace, but his brothers and sisters, his father and mother don't live there. They live, I think, in Mejido, not in Mejido, in someplace else. They live do you know, Maya, where the emperor and the empress live? But they're not on the compound, um, and so they're well taken care of. So now the discussion is that some of these former branches can be adopted back into the imperial family because they have the blood and they somehow qualify. And this bill will be presented, I think, tomorrow. And the Speaker of the House has said this is up for revision. They're going to pursue that so that there is no controversy or indecision about who's going to become emperor. I mean, there is no anticipation that the emperor is the current emperor is sick or ill or anything like that, but it is forward planning that the Japanese are famous for preparing for. The other legislation is the flag desecration bill. That is up for a vote. The 45 um, seats, 10% of the seats would be reduced from the lower house. That was a commitment that the LDP made for Ishin, and then Ishin came into the coalition. They also promised that Osaka would be the secondary capital. I think we've achieved some success on that. There's a little discussion about that. The 10% reduction, the LDP curiously doubled down this week and said, initially, before the election, before the LDP came back and kind of said, well, we've won the election, we don't need Ishin anymore. But they've still kept their promise with the reduction of 10%. And they've come back just this last week with a new configuration. You might remember that Ishin wanted all 45, all 10% of them. They wanted 50 at first, all of them to come from proportional representation. And the LDP came in and said, well, we can't do all from proportional representation from the list. Let's do half from direct votes. So you vote for the individual, and the other half from the list. They seem to have agreement on that. But this week, the LDP came up with the idea, let's take all of them from the proportional representation, just from the list, all 45 of them. That bill will pass in this Diet session before mid-July. So how they parcel that out is incredibly important. That bill, if it's 45 from the list, is what Ishin wanted from the very beginning. It's going to really make Mr. Tamaki angry and not want to vote for LDP policies, which the LDP needs those votes in the upper house. Mr. Tamaki has them. So this back and forth with Mr. Tamaki, I love you. I want to be with you. I want your votes. It's still not quite in balance. In certain areas, it is. They passed the supplemental budget. There are other areas where they are cooperating, but the LDP wants something a little bit more sustainable and more guaranteed. So they're working hard on that. But you see it going this way and then that way. It's very curious. It is Japanese politics. So we'll continue to keep our eye on it. We talked about the Bunshun scandal that continues to go. The LDP actively courting Ishin, and at the same time, the Democratic Party for the People, which is also called Kokumin in Japanese. It's Mr. Tamaki's group for budget support and for different issues. Mr. Tamaki is against the flag desecration issue, which the LDP and Ishin have already kind of agreed on. They need Mr. Tamaki, so maybe the flag desecration bill will have to fall by the wayside. But the dynamics inside the upper house are very fluid right now. There is no clear winner, but there's a fight going on, and the LDP is definitely trying to court the Democratic Party for the People, Kokumin, while keeping Ishin satisfied and at bay. So there's a lot of behind the scenes horse trading that's involved in that. The 45 seat reduction will happen this month. Let's see what else is going on with coalitions and just minimizing the backlash that any one of these moves is going to have. But it's very active, as I said earlier. The inside the Diet, it's been very active geopolitically as well. And then the yen decided to breach 160. That's the other issue that came up this week. It came out on a very strong showing of jobs data from the United States, and also, the Fed speculation about Japan, the Japanese yen vis-a-vis the U.S. dollar. The largest banking institution in Japan, MUFJ, actually warned this last week. I think maybe on Thursday they published a report, which is somewhat unusual, warning that if the Bank of Japan and the Ministry of Finance comes back with their standard 2.5 basis points, at the end of this month, the Bank of Japan always has their meeting at the end of the month, 2-day meeting. If they come back with a measly 2.5, you're gonna suffer from that, and you need to really pony up maybe 50 or 75 basis points. You need to kick it up, because otherwise you might be facing 170 yen to the dollar in no time at all. So, like I said, this psychological barrier of 160, once it's breached, the demons start coming out of the locked doors. So there's a lot of trepidation going on there, and I think you're going to see some pretty fine footwork by the Ministry of Finance and by the Bank of Japan over the next 3 weeks. Today is the 7th, so the Bank of Japan will be meeting within 3 weeks. But it does impact what's going on. It impacts the price of rice. Most of the rice is imported. Japan still is not self-sufficient in rice. Last year, the numbers are in now, the Japanese consumers ate less rice than they have over the last 7 years. That is partially due to the price last year. You remember we were going through a bit of a softness with rice. Koizumi was the minister at that point of time. They released stockpiles, the 1-year stockpiles, 2-year-old stockpiles. Pretty soon people were eating 5-year-old stockpiles and complaining about it, but bringing the price down. So that is something that's going on right now. They have had their first yield of rice from Okinawa, and it looks like the prices will be less than they were last year, but I don't know how sustainable that is. But it's being looked at. Let me see. The year-on-year decline last year was about 6%, 6.1% from previous years. So that's pretty suggestive. So we need to keep on top of that. Real wages were up modestly, but spending continues to be soft. People are a little bit worried about the future. They're not spending money. They're hoarding it. They're keeping it. They're not spending it. And the subsidies that the prime minister has now passed as a supplemental budget, 3.1 trillion yen, will be distributed. It's a layered response. It doesn't fix everything, but it does enhance competitiveness, and it kind of jiggers the economy a little bit. How long it will last, we're not sure. You know, the intervention of the yen, supporting the yen during Golden Week, that only lasted less than a month, and that was the most massive intervention so far. And now we are past 160. So you can only go to the well so many times, and I think we just know, the policymakers know, and all of us in this briefing know too, that the fundamentals need to be addressed, because you just keep going back and you're doing the same thing, and it's not sustainable. So something's got to give one way or the other, and I think it will be happening probably within this diet session, certainly within the next 2 months. You're going to see some movement there. Let me see what else we have with defense exports, alliances. That's about it for that. I do want to wrap up on one thing. It is June 7th today. In 1905, Japan had an enormous victory. Nobody really paid much attention to Japan in 1905. The Europeans were embroiled in their own mess, and Russia was the dominant naval player in the world. In 1905, in June, actually late May and early June, the Japanese defeated the Russian naval force in the Battle of Tsushima. This decisively put Japan on the world map about having a navy. And so, as a consequence of that, and Japan has always been mostly proud of their naval, not the aviation, but the navy. And you know how kids from the Tokyo University all aspire to go into the bureaucracies, and there's a pecking order there. Previously, the pecking order was the naval academy, and to join the navy, because that was the supreme projection of Japanese power. And as a consequence of that, in 1905, things changed. It was the Meiji era. Japan was beginning to expand, but this win really propelled Japan, actually formed the foundations of what happened in the Pacific War and Japan's expansion in Southeast Asia. It was a very significant event. If you don't know much about it, just do a little bit of Google. This was the foundation. 15 years later, they began construction of the National Parliament building after this victory. So big was that. They began the 15-year construction of the current diet. It ate up maybe 15% of the entire national budget for 15 years. They really almost went broke building that building. It's still today. If you've never been inside, you should talk to Maya about organizing a tour inside it. It is really something magnificent, and it stood the test of time. It was Japan's outward projection of we are here, we are a global power, and you need to pay attention to us. And that is a consequence of where we are today. We have Japanese politics that we talk about every week. It's an outgrowth of all of these things that have come together. I appreciate you watching, participating, and joining us in the Q&A, and also just being interested in this relationship between Japan and wherever you're from, your country. Even if you're living here, you're working in international business, trade, diplomacy, that sort of thing. Thank you very much for tuning in. Maya?
All right, thank you, Timothy, for this. And yes, we are moving towards the Q&A session. Well, one of my favorite parts of this briefing, knowing that we have only two. Okay, sorry for this. I couldn't help it. But anyway, thank you, Timothy. I appreciate everything that you do. And now, everybody who is with us still, or who will be with us, please let us hear your thoughts and questions as well. So we're moving to the first questions of this morning. They came from Byron, who is once again back online. And Timothy, you touched upon that the topic he's talking about in the beginning of the briefing, but still I believe that we can clarify a little bit further. The question, is preceded by a comment. Byron writes, virtually every day Prime Minister Takaichi appears to be answering questions in Parliament, some very mundane and some erudite. In no other parliament in the world does any other prime minister sit every day in parliament answering questions. Won't all this disappoint the public to see the prime minister spending little time in the regions and little time doing anything else except answering questions in parliament? Is there no process to equalize the procedures with the parliamentary democracies? To give the Prime Minister more time for actual governance work?
That's a great observation. Thank you very much for that question. As with a lot of things, a lot of this is performance, right? She's not answering off the cuff. These questions they must be prepared. The questions must be prepared in advance so that the prime minister's office can actually prepare the prime minister to answer them. And if you notice, sometimes she's actually looking down and reading from a script. And a lot of prime ministers have been criticized for that because they don't speak honestly, they don't speak forthrightly or off the cuff. Miss Takaichi was doing that earlier in her administration. You will have noticed that. And then she began to drift back, but it's awful hard to keep on top of that. So on the one hand, I do understand that it appears to be really a strain and what else could she be doing? But it's a parliamentary democracy and she does need to respond not so much to the LDP, she does that privately through other channels, but to the opposition. They don't have an opportunity. They can't grab her by the collar and have her answer questions. There are brief instances when she must do that, and that's what you're referring to now. They ask her a question, they try and make it look like it's all off the cuff, and they're gesticulating and stuff like that. They're reading from a script. Similarly, so is the prime minister. On the other hand, she is a policy wonk and she wants to read documents. She wants to be prepared. This last week, Byron, she was criticized for not having command of the responses and command of the details. And she admitted, she said, well, I was up until 3 attempting to prepare for today's briefing. I'm sorry, I wasn't able to get through it. But I'm doing the best that I can. So yes, there is some strain showing there, but she's up until 3 o'clock in the morning. That's her life. She lives 50 yards away from the Conte. She actually lives there with her husband. And I just can't imagine what it's like. Of course, you're surrounded by all sorts of, pomp and circumstance. You've got butlers and people who are opening doors for you and stuff like that. But you can see it is beginning to take a toll. She's great when she's on point and when she's smiling and when she's meeting people. I think that's where she really shines the best. But she is a policy person and her temperament demands that she is on top of things. And when she's not, her voice cracks. She's not good under that kind of a microscope. People are saying, that her polling is going to suffer as a consequence of that. But still, there's no denying she is a significant prime minister. She is likely more significant than even Shinzo Abe um, uh, will be at the end of her term, I believe. So yeah, all we can do is hope for the best. But everything is it's just like in Japanese business. A lot of performance. Show the crowds what they would like to see, and then get back to work. Maya?
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And there is another question that came soon after Byron's. And then that's from Aloha Apostle. And you touched upon that topic again in the beginning of the briefing today, speaking about the consumption tax on food. And now, we know that it's going to be 1%, not zero. But the
Right.
question is, how fast could that happen?
Great. Actually, other people are asking that question too. It can happen pretty quick. This is
Mm-hmm.
a big deal. It can happen pretty quick. The Ministry of Industry and Trade has said we can implement within 6 months. But I think it's more likely to be 2027. But that's only 6 months away too, right, Maya? We're like we said earlier,
Yeah,
we're halfway
much
through the year.
away.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, probably in terms of, well, in technical terms, I guess that the burden has been not released but diminished, because it's not going to be zero, it's going to be 1%, right? So it's not that much work, I guess. But anyway,
Well,
so the next
you,
question, yes?
Maya, the economy, the stock market, that sort of thing, the engine that propels that is hope for the future, hope for a better tomorrow. And this
Mm,
kind of movement inside the diet, it does provide that. It says, it might take 6 months, but in 6 months you're going to be a little bit richer. The economy is going to be better. The oil and the gas prices are not going to be as high. So keep at it. Keep plugging away. Do your job. Do as best as you can. Help is coming, and that propels a lot of the economy.
right, yes, the sense of hope. Okay, and then the next question again from Aloha Apostle is: what are some Japanese exports you believe are not being produced or marketed well to the rest of the world? You mentioned defense exports or drones, but what else is Japan missing out on?
Well, I think clearly, fruit and produce, but those aren't really big ticket items. They are cash crops, and Japan does a great job. I mean, look at how many varieties of strawberries they have. I mean, they keep coming up with new ones. Um, so the fruit market and the vegetable market does extremely well, but it's China is not importing much of that anymore. South Korea would prefer to have their indigenous agriculture supported and paid for with the yuan and not by getting involved in exchange rates. But I think that's one area, but it's not going to make a dent of difference. It really needs to be, chips, high tech. They can't do AI at this point, not as an export market, but high end AI embedded products. Remember what happened with Walkman and with Sony and that sort of thing. There are industries that Japan could excel at. One of them that Japan was restricted from was the airplane market. Japan used to be, the supreme, right at the vanguard of aircraft engineering, especially like sea drones and seaplanes, that sort of thing. That's starting to come back up, and I think seaplanes have a great appeal throughout the world, not just for firefighting, but for also transporting people from, major airports to various places that have lakes or rivers where the transportation can be eased. I think, though, that very quickly we're going to surpass that, and drones are going to come into the fore. I don't think anybody, I don't think even most people in this briefing appreciate right now how huge drones are going to be. Drones are changing the face of war, and it's always the military industrial complex that comes up with the technologies, and then very quickly it bleeds into commerce and to the commercial market, and that's going to happen. You see what drones did with war. You can't even begin to imagine what it's going to happen with the economy, with delivery, with air taxis. How much money and energy is spent on asphalt and the internal combustion engine and things like that. So I think I'm very hopeful for the future, and I think it's going to come at a very brisk pace. Give it a couple of years, but I think the Japanese in particular realize that the drone economy is one that could probably lift them out of these 30-year doldrums.
Right. Okay. And yes, since we're talking about, well, the economy, so we've got a question from Manabe-san, and he writes, the issues with rice and NAFTA seem to be a matter of political intervention in structural problems. What do you think?
That's a great observation. So, for those of you who are not quite up to speed. NAFTA is a petroleum byproduct. It's used throughout the industry. It's a critical component for surgical gloves, for plastics, for packaging, for all sorts of things. The prime minister, Maya, you'll remember we reported on this maybe 2 weeks ago. The prime minister went out and said, there is enough NAFTA. We have enough NAFTA for until 2027, sometime in mid 2027. We're okay. And that very next week, many of the package makers began to remove coloring from their packages. And the reason there was because the NAFTA prices are too high. We were worried about the supply of NAFTA. So we're immediately addressing that by removing that as a input to production. So that was pretty quick. I mean, Japan can move quick when it wants to, when there's a profit motive behind it, and it moves really slow when it doesn't want to. For example, the reduction of the consumption tax on food, not to zero, but to 1%. Because it's just too difficult, right? So
Right.
it's very curious. But yes, they moved very quickly, and yes, like you say, Mr. Manabe-san, it is curious that it seems like there's a shortage now, and there's a bit of a panic, even in light of what the prime minister said. I'm not sure what the whole story is there.
Right. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll continue following the news. And also, Frederick Rick says, I like to point out that when the US dollar hits 160 yen, the series of new 1,000, 5,000, and 1,000 notes adds up to less than $100, which is like 99.80 US dollars on Friday. So thank you for that detail.
Say that again. You accumulate the 1,000 yen, the 5,000 yen, and the Ichimayan note together, and
Mhm.
they don't even equal 100 US dollars.
I imagine that is what Rick means. So, Rick, if we
That
are
is
mistaken,
astounding.
yeah, yes, indeed. So things are happening, and
Yeah,
well,
it's true because one Ichimayan and the 5,000 yen note, yeah, that's 150, and add
well,
another, yeah, that makes sense.
yes, indeed. Okay, and
So for
then
people who are traveling overseas for vacation or for buying Louis Vuitton bags, this hurts.
right, yes, I mean for
Yeah,
Japanese people, indeed, who do that. Not so much for the foreigners who come to Japan.
yeah.
It's actually the other way around for them. All right, and yes, so we've got two people today, Peter Pan and Patricia, talking about a diet tour. Well, Peter Pan says, I would appreciate more details about the diet building, and Patricia says, well, well, I would be up for a tour of the diet. So
Patricia, you joined us once before, didn't you?
I I think I don't know, Patricia, but yes, okay, we'll see.
So Maya, we need to tell everybody we've done this before. We've done this on two or
Yes.
three different occasions. You organized it, and then I kind of walked people through. I didn't carry a flag, but we had what 30 or 40 people, and
We
on
had
both
40,
occasions,
like close to 50 people actually. Yes, yes.
yeah. The tour, the way I run it, lasts about an hour. It is great, not just because I'm doing it, but because I don't think there are many people that are as familiar with the inside of the diet than I am. When I was the diet secretary for Nakayama Taro a long, long time ago, one of my jobs was to take busloads of children and grandmas and grandpas and their various koenkai inside the diet and run that tour for them in Japanese. And so you've got this monkey on a leash who's giving you a tour of the diet. My God, I've got to go to that. How much is the ticket? Right back then. So I did earn my chops, and the building is really magnificent and full of history and architectural genius, actually. But yeah, if there's a groundswell of support, and we can get another 40 or 50 people who would sign up, and it would cost, right, Maya? Not, it doesn't cost me. I can't bill for it, but To do
No,
something
no.
like that, it's a lot of work on you, isn't it?
It is a lot of work, yes, on me, indeed. But yes, if we have enough people, why not? It will be really nice to organize one. And okay, so moving on. Yes, Rick says 10,000, 5,000, 1,000 yen together. Yes, that's what Timothy said. So we
Wow.
read, yes, the message correctly. Thank you for the clarification, Rick. And also, yes, Hiroaki says, well, the World Cup, Soccer World Cup starts very soon, but there seems to be no excitement about it. What's going on? So I was actually not really following the World Cup, so I don't even know when it starts, but I imagine that people are so much preoccupied with other stuff. Well, the economy, the geopolitics and everything. It's piece after piece of news, and all of them are troubling actually. So I don't, yeah, I don't. I'm not surprised that there isn't that much excitement, not in Japan at least.
The World Cup this year will occur on three different countries: the United States, Canada, and Mexico. They will host the World Cup. It will go for what, about a month and a half, a month and 5 weeks, maybe 5 weeks or so. There are maybe 21 venues in the United States where the stadiums will be hosting this. This is a big deal. And I think one of the reasons, to respond to your question, Maya, I think that people are worried about these being a flashpoint. So there are many protests and opposition to, for example, ICE, the Immigration and Control Administration within the United States, the Democrats and the Republicans fighting. But also, Iran has kind of thumped the chest of the United States and said, "Look, if you continue this, we have our ways." And there's great concern that there are sleeper cells in the United States. I mean, for 4 years, the border was open, so anybody could come into the United States. People who wanted to create a new life, but also people who had nefarious purposes and want to harm the United States or want to be in a position to exert some concessions. And so I think that's maybe one of the reasons. I don't want to put too much anticipation on that, but soccer, for people who love soccer, it is a big deal, and they will watch that. And anytime there's a big soccer game here, you can hear it in the neighborhood and in the bars as you're walking through town. People go crazy. They get dressed in the uniforms and they really support their teams. It is a pretty big deal, but I think, unlike you, Maya, you have to, like soccer and kind of follow it.
Right. Apologies for not liking soccer that much. No, I say this because back home, this it's really huge news. And once and there is any soccer cup, World Cup or European Cup or any other cup, it's just huge. So I never grew into that one. So anyway, all right. So
Yeah,
moving
you were
on,
too busy.
I was too busy playing volleyball, So yes, all right. And then we've got also a question from Peter Pan asking, Toyota's hydrogen-powered cars, do they have a future against electric vehicles? What do you think?
Definitely they do. The problem here is availability of hydrogen. Hydrogen is clean, it's plentiful, it's inexpensive, it's got good longevity in terms of being an energy. So I went to the drone convention in Makahari. I mentioned that. There were a couple of operations where they have the drone, it's powered by hydrogen. And when you purchase their drone, you also purchase the hydrogen maker. It's about as big as a small refrigerator, and it produces the fuel for the drone as well. It it has a longer life than petroleum or gasoline. Gasoline has more of a power base, but hydrogen is longer lasting, and the storage is a little bit more complete. I think the problem with hydrogen taking off is just its availability and the government decision to promote hydrogen as a viable product. It's not there. The United States has promoted it. The Quad, the United States, India, Japan, Australia, they signed a deal just this maybe 2 weeks ago. The president of the United States has front-loaded efforts on hydrogen among the Quad members. And if we can get India to kind of really put that front and center, and Japan to actually build, there are gas stations. They're called Mirai for hydrogen. There's one in my neighborhood. It's it's not open. It's I don't think there's enough need for it now. So creating the demand and the entire um, uh, environment for gasoline powered, for hydrogen powered, for electric powered vehicles will change almost overnight. But it takes a government commitment to say hydrogen is part of our
Yeah.
future. We're going to build the infrastructure for that. You don't have to worry about running out of hydrogen between trips. So that's that's what the Japanese government needs to focus on now. And
Right.
as Langley Esquire is involved in promoting that too, and trying to get the Japanese government to make that commitment.
Yeah, there is Langley Esquire published a policy watch or a briefing a couple of it was last year, I guess,
That's
on
right.
hydrogen policies, right? But I think it's also interesting because personally, and I'm not yet so well versed in the technology, but personally, I think that the hydrogen is actually what is going to happen after the electric vehicles and the batteries, because I mean, we see that we talk that the electric vehicles will save the environment, and that's not actually the case, because a lot of resources, natural resources, are necessary for the batteries. And I mean, it's once again, it comes down to recycling, how recyclable they are and how available they are. While when it comes to hydrogen, you have,
Absolutely.
you can produce it from water even. Once
Yeah.
the Yeah, right. And I think that basically the battery talk and the electric vehicles became so talked about and kind of prevalent anyway, not that much yet, because of the European Union policies. I mean, they very forcefully, not in the
Yeah.
bad sense of the word, but very forcefully actually made everybody else, get on that wagon or bandwagon. But it seems that that's not going to be really that sustainable as many people thought it would be in the, for the future. So maybe Toyota was once again very, you know, is it, do you say forthcoming, or what is it when it comes to technology? They had a very long vision.
Foresightful. Yeah.
For
Foresightful.
Yes,
Yeah.
foresightful. Thank you for that. Yes, when
So
it comes to
I think
technology.
Maya, in 4 or 5 years we're going to look back on this and say it was just a Betamax moment for Japan, and for a lot of
Mhm.
the other economies too. You know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's see. I'm really curious. I cannot wait to see what happens. But yeah, I think that Toyota had, both their mind and heart in the right place.
Yeah.
So,
Agreed.
um, yes, okay. And well, Percival says, Tim and Maya, it would be great to give us a tour of the diet. Okay, we are getting more voices in support of that idea. And we also have, I read really a very nice and funny comment at the same time. Let me find it. Let me find it. Okay, that's Percival again saying, well, how about movie nights this summer? The summer will be scorching hot this year. So, how about any horror movie to cool us off?
Oh, Maya would love that, wouldn't she?
Well, yeah, maybe I'll skip that night, movie night.
So just
But
to let you guys in on a secret, I love horror movies. I love, Friday the 13th. I love Freddy Krueger. I love all of those things. And whenever it comes up in just daily talk, Maya has not seen any of them. I think she saw one horror movie when she was like 12. And since then, she doesn't even watch, movies where there's killing or shooting or anything like that going on.
that's a lot of, revelations for one session, Timothy.
So
Yes,
as a
okay.
consequence, yes, we might see the Prada, the what is it, the Devil Wears Prada, or some of these other movies. But for movie night, if you're looking for bang bang shoot shoot, let's slice it up. It's not going to happen on Maya's watch, believe me.
No, I'm sorry. My mind is very Impressible? Is that what you say? I cannot sleep for days after I watch horror movies or movies with violence. So
Yeah,
that's, yeah, kind of difficult, really. For me, not for everybody else. So
yeah.
anyway, let me continue with the questions. So Aloha
Okay.
Apostle says, politically, it doesn't seem like prefectures have as much power compared to the state. Do prefectures sue the federal government like they do in the US? Is is the state, I'm sorry, is the state rights a thing in Japan?
Who is this from?
From Aloha Apostle.
Okay, a good observation. And no, it's very much not like the United States is a federal system. It's a combination of states which have states' rights and the federal government which has federal rights. There are certain laws that the United States central government has primacy for, or that they hold sway, and there are certain rights that the states hold. So, for example, if you die and you write a will or something like that, that's guided by individual states. It's not a national law. There are other, like immigration is a national law. It's not guided by the states, and that's part of the controversy that the Immigration and Control Administration is having with the states. The states are saying, "You guys stay out," and you're harassing our citizens, our state citizens, and the federal government is saying yes, but with regard to immigration, you've got violations, and we're trying to protect the law and enforce the law, and so that's why they are restricted to these little enclaves that are owned by the central government, by the federal government. But outside that, it's the state. So that's part of it. Here in Japan, the reality is that 30%, more than 30% of the entire Japanese population live in the Kanto Plain. No governor can hold a candle to that. I mean, anybody else, if you compare yourself to the governor of Tokyo, which is by most calculations stronger and more powerful than many presidents of countries or prime ministers. The governor of Tokyo is huge. That's a huge economy. It's the biggest economy in is Southeast Asia, except for China. Just the economy. I mean, that's like comparing the economy of California to anybody else. It's so massive. You throw in Kanagawa and perhaps Chiba to a lesser extent, and that's 30% of the entire population. They do have governors conventions. The governors get together every year, maybe twice a year, and then different regions have their own governor meetings as well. I know many of the governors. One of the governors was a classmate of mine, the governor of Gifu, a classmate. We went to graduate school together, and their concerns are a little bit more parochial. They can negotiate with the central government for roads or highways or subsidies, things like that, bridges. But it does depend on their political clout and how many votes they have and what their contribution to the economy is. And not only that, but is their governor LDP favorable or not? And is he leaning towards Ishin or that sort of calculation as well? But no, it is not comparable to the United States.
Right. Okay. And well, before moving to one more question from Aloha Apostle, there is a question from Runen or Runen. I don't know how to pronounce that handle name on YouTube, and they write, "Thanks for the weekly update. Japan's energy policy." Regarding the energy policy, the seventh strategic energy plan sets a 40 to 50% renewables target by 2040.
Yeah.
How is the mood in the administration to follow up on this target?
I think this commit was made by Mr. Kishida, and I think the reason why he felt so confident, it's 2045. You can promise almost anything, and as long as you dedicate the resources to it, you're likely to achieve it. So I think Japan will achieve that. It must achieve it. It needs to wean itself away from oil, and that's why the hydrogen conversation is really pertinent, and also why drones is important to reduce this automobile centric society that Japan has. I mean, the United States, it's even worse. If you don't have a car in the United States, it's difficult for you to, in many cities to actually really be productive. In Japan, that's not necessarily the case, but the automobiles rule. The automobile manufacturing companies contribute, you know, parts and services, that sort of thing, just a little bit less than 50% of the entire economy. So yeah, I think it's something that's due for a change. But these kinds of things, there are stories that renewable energy has been discovered from fallen aircraft and from aliens who have spaceships and things like that in the what the black net zone. People are talking about that, but the United States has basically admitted there are aliens, there are alien crafts. This disclosure is coming out. There's a new movie out called Disclosure, and the director Steven Spielberg has admitted this is not fantasy. This is based on reality, and I'm just trying to prepare the population for that eventuality. Maybe that's the movie we should see, Maya.
Yeah, if it is on a show in Japan, why not?
And they don't have
Right.
any killing.
Exactly. Okay, and then thank you for that. And the next question from Aloha Apostle is right up your lane. But maybe you can make the answer short, because I know you can talk for hours and hours about this. So the question is, could you explain how the bill writing is done in Japan? Are lobbyists as a big part of the process as they are in America? Or do legislators write bills and get co-sponsors before introducing them?
If I laughed, would that be enough of a response?
Well, I guess that it's not going to explain the details of what you want to say.
Okay, but it's short.
Sh-
So,
It's too short.
so
Okay, it's too short.
yeah, lobbyists don't get that involved in legislation, in forming legislation. So, if somebody were to hire me as a lobbying firm and say, we want to promote this law, we need to push it through, we need to get a coalition of Diet members, that's a 5-year project. And there's no guarantee that at the 5th year you're going to be able to submit it through the Diet, and then it will be passed in the lower house and it will be passed in the upper house. It takes much more oomph than a lobby firm can provide. You need think tanks, you need a lot of different things. So most of the bills come up through the bureaucracies. Those are the machines that build bills, and they pass them through their favorite politicians. They lobby the politicians. Actually, there are opportunities for third-party lobbyists in the economy, like Langley Esquire, to contribute and to promote certain parts of that. But our real claim to fame is not on legislation; it's on revising or helping to change the interpretation of certain rules and regulations, not the law. The law is rather firm and hard. With regulations, you can have a little bit of flexibility there, and if you're good on your feet and you have convincing arguments and you have enough wherewithal to make it happen and enough time, yeah, you can change. How um, regulations are applied to certain things. But getting into legislation, it's a completely different thing. The bill, for example, on gambling and casinos, that was motored out of the Abe faction. Not many people know that was a bill that was generated within the faction and then promoted through their members, and it eventually became a bill and it was actually passed. More that's not very frequent. More often than not, it's the bureaucrats that do it. Secondly, it would be maybe a political party or a think tank that promotes something and then they get a coalition. And then thirdly, the member of parliament might champion it. He might be in charge of the legislation in a committee, but it's much more dispersed than that, and it's a big deal. It's moving mountains to get legislation. I hope that's somewhat responsive. I like my first response better.
It is better than your first response, definitely so. Thank you for that. Okay, and we've got another question, basically two other questions from two different listeners who come basically on top of comments you made in the beginning of this briefing, but please still, yes, clarify them. So the first one, I will read it backwards, read them backwards in chronological order. So it comes from Percival, and it is dollar has, or okay, the dollar passed 160 yen last Friday. How long this can be contained? How many cash interventions we have? Are there any infinite reserves? Or would it be better to use that to help consumption and pass the cash to consumers?
Yeah, you have a lot of smart people that are dealing with that. I mean, the smartest, brightest people that graduate from the University of Tokyo go into the finance ministry. These guys know what they're talking about. They understand impact. They understand inflections, that sort of thing. And the intervention, I mean, it was huge. It was 11 trillion yen. That's like maybe 73 billion US dollars that was inserted into the economy during Golden Week. That comes out of a fund. I think that amount is probably maybe 8% of the fund that Japan holds. So Japan has a very deep well, but that well is comprised of stocks and bonds, land, airports, port facilities that the Japanese government either owns outright or owns at least 33 and a third percent of. That's what the law says. If the Japanese government is going to be a holder, it must hold at least 33 and a percent of the shares. And that's enormous. The Japanese government supports the economy. You can tell clearly. Look how much money they have and how much money they can extract pretty much not at the drop of a hat, but yeah, maybe at the drop of a hat. They can generate those funds and they can contribute them. 8%, that leaves a lot left. But yes, they could build hospitals, they could do lots of other things. But I think the calculus is get the economy back on track. And who knows what's going to happen? You know, there could be something that picks up this breath of fresh air, this wind, and it carries forward. So it's priming the pump. People do that throughout economies all over the world. And I think that's what they're attempting to practice here too.
All right. Yes, thank you for that. And Patricia has a question about the imperial succession. So she says, would the restoration of imperial status to those marrying commoners be retroactive? If so, how far back?
I don't think it would be retroactive, but I'm not up with the legislation. But let me just correct something. If you marry, they're talking about women marrying commoners. And right now, women will not be an emperor or an empress. That's not part of the conversation. The conversation is trying to expand who is a part of the imperial family. And maybe a princess marrying a commoner is okay, and then they have a child, and then that child becomes emperor. That's the theme here. The other one is that people who used to belong to the imperial household, but maybe they're separated by one bloodline, they're an uncle or a cousin, and so they don't qualify. Maybe now they qualify, but they probably, yeah, I guess that means that they would qualify as emperor material in a pinch, but I don't, that kind of seems retroactive because they were in the imperial family, then they weren't, and now they are again. Um, it's very complicated. The Japanese want to preserve this heritage. I mean, it goes back thousands and thousands of years, father to son, father to son. The imperial household, it's the longest dynasty that's ever existed on Earth, and they want to preserve that. And there have been female empresses in the past, but the current flavor of the day and the current appetite inside Parliament, and I think maybe in the general Japanese population, and once again, we are living in a strange time. The Constitution removed the emperor, removed the household, removed MacArthur came in with a wide swath and demolished that and had the emperor say, "I am not a living god. I take that back, and I'm not going to be involved in politics. I'll have ceremonial roles, and but I will stay as the emperor and the head of state." So it's just a period that we're in. It could change. I think it will change, but that's not a today issue.
Okay, thank you for that. And from Hiroko-san, there is a question. What are your thoughts on the poll results by the South Korean think tank? It shows that Prime Minister
Yeah.
Takaichi was on top of the popularity list, higher than President Trump.
How
What do you
about
think?
that?
Mm.
I think that's remarkable. You wouldn't have expected that 3 years ago under the previous administration, even though the previous South Korean administration was more favorable to the United States and actually working harder, apparently, on mending fences with Japan. But now it's a different game. Even though the current prime minister is not known to be a warm and hearty supporter of Japan, he has changed his tune. And the relationship between the two countries is getting better. And this poll kind of shows that the country also admires her. She's a female, and look what she did. And she was able to do it in Japan, and maybe we can do that here in Korea. Korea's, I think, by many standards, I want to say worse than that's a pejorative comment, different from the situation for women in Japan. So I think that they would like to see those changes. Korea is just a fantastic economy, and the the involvement of women in industry and trade and in government far surpasses what the Japanese have. So I think they see this as an opportunity and as a maybe a trend that happened in Europe, in Italy, and in England, and in several other countries, and it's about time for us too. So I think that's part of it. But the other thing too is Sanai Takaichi is a remarkable person, and she engenders respect and admiration, and you can see that for me. I watch very closely, and I'm enamored with her, and I want her to do well, and I want Japan to do well, and so it's kind of reflective. It's not just because I've got money in the game. I'm saying this honestly as an observer and as a participant.
Okay, thank you for that. And one more question from, oh no, it's a suggestion actually from Patricia. She says, I suggest a movie in the afternoon when it is the hottest outside. Right. Okay. So we've got different ideas today.
Keep those recommendations coming.
Yes. And let us create a list of them and then find an option that works really for, I guess, not for everybody, but for most of the people. And okay, with this,
So
Timothy.
before you wrap up, Maya, but on that point, movie night is good. It's not quite everything. You know, if we go to a movie together, it's for us to get together to schmooze and to get to know each other a little bit better. Not so much to talk about politics, but to know each other. We've got a fabulous community here, and we should know each other, and we should be more and more familiar with each other. A movie doesn't quite do it. That's why we have a dinner beforehand and then the movie. But in a movie, you're sitting there being entertained, but you're not talking, you're not interacting with other people. The diet tour is a little bit different, and it be a little bit better, but it would involve maybe a dinner after the diet tour. The diet tour would take maybe an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 15, about hour and 20 minutes. And then the same group would to go to dinner. And although a dinner might cost Nanasan or Hassan or whatever, we would need to charge more to pay for the administration of it. For the diet tour, I cannot charge for that. I cannot appear to be receiving any benefit for running a tour for people who are interested in Japanese politics. So that's a separate issue. But if we package something together so that somehow we would pay for Maya's time for administering it, I would do it. I would love to do it. I'd love to hang out with people and walk them through these halls. That would be a great I don't know.
Timothy, we're losing you. So I don't know why, but yes, so obviously the connection is not that good. And it was fine in the beginning, but not now. So then, if Timothy doesn't come to life in a couple of seconds, then I'll have to close this briefing for today. And to everybody who stayed with us, thank you so very much indeed for being here, and thank you so very much for showing interest in the movie night and also in a diet tour. And yes, all right. So Rick, thank you very much. Rick says January, the movie night then was a great hangout for Avatar. And yes, okay, let me just do this. So once again, we'll be here at 8:20 next week. Please come back and let's continue the conversation, and let's continue observing Japanese politics, how they impact, life and business here in Japan. Timothy seems to be here, but the screen I see is white. So, Timothy, if you're hearing me, I'm closing the briefing for the moment. So, thank you so very much. Please stay online and let's see if we can figure out. Oh, you're back. Okay. No. Okay. So, that's all. And yes. Okay, see you then. See you next Sunday, and thanks a lot. Have a great Sunday. Have a great week, and stay well. Do not succumb to the heat because next week is going to be rather hot. So that's all. Thanks a lot. See you then.